a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting teamsters1932.org/organize to start today. I'm Rick Smith, host of The Rick Smith Show, inviting you to listen to my show during the noon hour every weekday right here on KCAA. My show is sponsored locally by Teamsters 1932, a strong union with 14,000 members in the IE. Our message is clear. Unions improve the lives of working people. You have a right to form and join a union, so go to Teamsters1932.org and get started now.
Located in the heart of San Bernardino, California, the Teamsters Local 1932 Training Center is designed to train workers for high-demand, good-paying jobs in various industries throughout the Inland Empire. If you want a pathway to a high-paying job and the respect that comes with a union contract, visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org. Are you looking for a good union job? The Inland Empire's 14,000-member-strong Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get working people trained and placed in open positions in public service clerical work and in jobs in the logistics industry. This is a new opportunity to advance your career and raise standards across the region. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Labor unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. That's the message from Teamsters Local 1932, a strong and successful labor union based in San Bernardino that represents over 14,000 hardworking people across the Inland Empire. The Teamsters are ready to help you organize for better pay, increased benefits, and improved working conditions. Reach out to Teamsters 1932 at teamsters1932.org/organize to speak with an organizer today.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Had a really interesting back and forth just before the show today about optimism. Yesterday on the program, we were talking about, some interesting things going on. There's some organizing happening. I'm guardedly optimistic about the future. There's some good policy coming out of Congress. Maybe some wins the Biden administration getting that are going to address healthcare, going to address infrastructure, going to a little bit of addressing climate. A generation that's finally finding some empowerment. And this person goes to me, how can you be optimistic in this moment? I said, guardedly optimistic, not optimistic, guardedly. I'm guardedly optimistic. And this person goes, how, given the fact that we're so polarized, we're so divided. And I said, look, I have faith in the younger generation. And I began to explain. I said, look, here's the reality. I think the boomer generation, the older generation, my parents' age generation, lost cause at this point. Minds completely eroded by disinformation, by outrage candy, by all of the propaganda that the F channel and the right wing has heaped upon them. Gone. Completely. My generation, Generation X, pretty much gone. Pretty much gone. And a perfect example, for instance, I work in the freight industry. I've been working in the freight industry over 30 years. Walked into work the other day, and the first three people I came across, about my age, advertising their stupidity right across their chest. First person I saw had a Teamsters for Trump t-shirt on, a scab shirt, and made in the shirt was made in Honduras, printed by non-union labor, but he proudly displayed Teamsters for Trump on it. And when I called it a scab shirt, no idea why. Yeah. Never mind the fact that the Biden administration saved his pension and the pensions of all workers in multi-employer funds. Never mind that reality. The second person I came across had an F. Biden t-shirt on. Again, we're going to show our stupidity. Third person had a generic kind of, Democrats suck. Because, they've been overly misinformed that somehow the Republican Party, who, just voted massively against veterans and have given tax breaks to corporate America and the very wealthy and have done nothing to help them, they see as their savior. Because it's what they've heard. It's what they've been fed. It's been beat into them. Now, in their defense, Democrats have not always been the greatest friend of working people. But it's also their fault. And these are the people who have led good lives because of their union, because of the wages that they earned, because of the contract that they worked under. And it reminded me, of something that, an older former president of the AFL-CIO said back in I guess it was in the 60s, he said it. George Meany said, how do you get a guy to go on strike when he's making 10 grand a year? And the meaning behind that is, how do you get someone to be active? How do you get someone to be engaged? How do you get someone to do the things that need to be done when they're making a good living, when they're okay, when their prospects are positive? How do you get them to fight for something that's going to make others' lives better when it's about them? And this, again, one of the failures of the labor movement. And as I was talking with this person, I said, I look at that and those folks are lost. They're gone. They're fives. There's nothing you could do about them. But the younger generation understands what my grandparents' generation understood, and that is the idea of movement unionism. I grew up hearing this idea of business unionism. Businesses, and unions are there's no difference. And unions are. I actually had someone one time tell me that unions are like car insurance. And I'm like, what? He goes, well, if you ever get into trouble, you're grateful that you have it. And you go, yeah, but what if I never do? Well, be grateful you have it because you might never need it, but it'll be there for you. And I'm going, that's dumb. It's a dumb argument. I see it completely different than, just in case. I see it as proactive. How do I get better wages, hours, conditions? How do I demand better? How do I fight for better? How do we make lives better? This is what unions are about, and this is what the younger generation absolutely gets. And I'm looking at this moment, and the optimism that I have is the death of this idea of a quid pro quo unionism. That I get something for my dues now. That it's all about me. It's all about the individual. And this is so much 80s era thinking, Gen X thinking. It's what I grew up being told as a child. Hooray for me. The one who dies with the most toys wins. Greed is good. It was all hyper individualism. And where I'm guardedly optimistic is the younger generation. They're talking about, hey, how do we use our collective power to make lives better, make our lives better, make our coworkers' lives better, make our communities better, change the world, address climate change in the workplace, big, huge ideas, taking on beyond the self. That gives me some hope. Whereas you got a guy walking around, F Biden t-shirt, and you go, well, why? All about grievance, all about they internalize everything is about them. This quid pro quo, I give you something, I get something in return, and it's about what I get. And here's the failure of business unionism. This idea that, it's like car insurance. What happens if you don't get what you wanted? What happens if, you didn't get everything you wanted? Well, you get people who are disgruntled. And this is the world that we're in. I didn't get everything I wanted, and no one ever does. Ask any child kicking and screaming in the cereal aisle when mom says no sugary cereal for you. Then you get this kind of anger and division. They pointed at the union and blame the labor leaders. And this is one of those moments where I go, and I've had people say, well, it's the leaders' fault. I'm going, if you're blaming labor leaders for the work conditions that you're struggling under, you don't understand democracy. You're probably the same people who blame Congress for all of the problems we have now. Probably the same people, not understanding how the democratic process works. I blame the problems in Congress on voters, just like I blame the problems in the workplace on workers. Unionized workers, and workers in general. You have the power in this country to collectively organize and fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. Most of us just don't, because guess what? We've been sold on the idea, that's right, it's all about me. It's all about the individual. It's all about the self. What do I get? What's in it for me? And we don't see that kind of community that my grandparents' generation lived under. Now, don't get me wrong. They had radical self-interest too. They wanted better wages, hours, and conditions to support their families. They wanted to make sure that they got pensions and health care and all that stuff for themselves and their families. Absolutely. But by doing so, made everyone's lives better. And the idea of unionism, and this is where I learned from old timers. The idea of being part of a union was being part of something that made people's lives better. It wasn't about just transactional, that, hey, what do I get out of it? What's in it for me? It was being part of something. The union hall was the place where people held their weddings. It's where they held their family events. It's where they held funerals. It was the center of the community for workers. And sadly, that's been destroyed. And I see this younger generation who is organizing outside of the traditional, legacy unions right now. I see them as kind of a throwback to that kind of mentality, that we're going to be communal, that we're going to make our space better, that we're going to fight for, ourselves and our coworkers and our communities and make things better. For too long, we've been easily divided. And this is where I was having this conversation. I go, you look at what's happened in a lot of workplaces across this country. The divide and conquer has been incredible. I've had people over the years go, well, the labor leaders allowed this and labor leaders. I go, no, again, you don't understand how democracy in the workplace works. Employers did. Employers understood this really well and used it against unions and workers in a lot of places. Take the two-tier wage system, for instance. They were dangling the huge carrot, hey, we're going to give you a big raise. Here's a big raise. Just screw the unborn. Never mind the workers that aren't here yet. We'll give them a different wage and different benefits and different everything. But you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Because you're not going to see them. That's down the road. Until eventually it wasn't down the road anymore, and you had two guys standing next to each other, one making good wages, good benefits, good health care, good retirement, good work, good all of that, and another guy working for substantially less. And now you have a situation where you have intergenerational jealousy. Instead of where when I started, the old timers would take the young guys under their wings and mentor them to become good workers and good members of the union, good members of the community. Now you have friction, which is what employers want. They don't want cohesion in the union. They don't want people to be part of that community. They want to tear that apart, and they've done that masterfully. I think back to when I started. I still remember the old guy who the first day on the job comes over, puts his arm around me, kid, I'm going to teach you to be a Teamster. We're going to show you the ropes, and you're going to learn, and you're going to be a good member. If I ever had any questions, that's who I went to. He was always there. Every time I'd see him, hey, how are things going? How's the girlfriend? How are things? Part of your life. Part of the community. And that over the years has changed to this greed model. What's in it for me? It's about a business. It's transactional. And as I said, um, this this next generation, they are seeing things a little bit differently, and that's giving me some hope. Again, I say guardedly optimistic because we don't know yet how this is going to play out. We're seeing the beginning. It's in the infancy. We're seeing the beginnings of it, but the beginnings of it are hopeful. Now, corporate America doing everything they can possibly do to divide and conquer, as you expect. But we're in this moment where there's some excitement. There's some opportunity to build true worker power. And not just because of a union contract, but because of empowered workers. And this is what I talk about for years. The one thing that whole process from day one, because I didn't know much about what being a union member was. I knew unions made lives better. I grew up in a housing project where when you saw someone get a union job, their lives got better immediately. Food at the end of the month, kids got secondhand bikes, they bought a secondhand car, they eventually moved out of the projects, their lives got better, and you could see it happening. And the community that we lived in was happy for them. Little jealous because still left behind, but happy for them because their lives got better. Now we're in this kind of tear down mode where we've got to build. And this is where I went back to this. I'm again guardedly optimistic that this generation kind of gets it. That they kind of understand this communal nature of work. And that they're going to make changes. And understand, it's not going to be the same model as the 1950s. They're going to demand different things. For instance, I was just reading an article that said, this generation is demanding a 4-day work week. They want to have more time off. That's their value. And collectively across the board, that's what they're fighting for. Much like, 100 some years ago when they were fighting for the 8-hour day. Not just for the individual, but for everyone. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what you will was the battle cry. Fighting for weekends, fighting for family time. That didn't exist prior. This is what happens when you have empowered workers, when you have a worker movement. And something that, quite honestly, is what scares the living you-know-what out of corporate America. Which is why they're spending so much money on union busting, why Amazon spends millions of dollars attacking their workers with propaganda, why they spend so much money on lobbying Congress and buying politicians to stop organizing in its tracks by making the laws so antiquated and fighting in the courts to ossify. The ossification of our labor laws is just incredible. To slow the process down. Because understand, right now, the reason we haven't seen the explosion of organizing that my grandparents' generation saw after World War II is because of the NLRB process and how underfunded that is. Because that process slows things down. Whoa, need to slow that down. Need to take some of that energy away from workers. Need to calm it a little bit. Whereas right now, I'll tell you, if this was 1948, 49 again, 50, I think back to some of the old timers that I knew. They'd be shutting things down. I remember one old timer told me that they used to go on strike once every 10 years, even if it was just for one day. And the idea being that when workers cross that threshold out onto that picket line, that they know they fought for something and that they wouldn't give it away. And strikes have been almost non-existent over the last 30 years. Which is why it's been easy to trade away the gains of a generation that we've forgotten. Why it's been easy to create two-tier wage systems and move from a defined benefit pension that gave security in retirement to well, maybe we'll put contributions in, maybe there'll be money there, maybe Wall Street won't steal it all, kind of defined contribution pension that most people don't even contribute to and because the wages haven't kept up. So when I say I'm guardedly optimistic, I look at a younger generation who sees how their parents struggled and wants a different life, wants a better life, wants a better opportunity, and they're looking for how to get that. Now, do they know much about, my grandparents' generation? Do they know much about the organizing that happened 100 years ago? Do they know much about labor's history and the struggles of the past? Maybe not. But what they know is what they've seen their parents go through is not for them. And they're seeing the labor movement as an opportunity to make those real changes. They're seeing their fellow coworkers as an opportunity to make real change. Whereas if government won't or can't, they have to. This is what democracy looks like. This is what direct action looks like. And that gives me some hope. So when I see my generation, wearing their ignorance on their shirts, I go, maybe it's hopeless for my generation. Maybe we've screwed things up because, we were told we could all have that corner office. I have hope that the younger generation, my kids, maybe they can change things. So as divided and as polarized as we are in this moment, I've always said from the beginning of all this, the workplace is where we can make real change. In that arena, fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, a better life, better opportunities, is where we can make real change. And out of that will spring the kind of empowerment, the kind of engagement, the kind of consciousness that maybe we need to pull us back together and move our politics in a more positive direction. So am I optimistic? Guardedly. Do I think it's going to be easy? No. The entrenched interests, they are going to kick and scream and fight and carry on. Oh, like none other. But I'll tell you, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for the opportunity. I'm hopeful that this generation gets it. That's where I'm at. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. Am I crazy? Am I crazy for being guardedly optimistic that things can change? That people don't want to work 60 hours a week and still not be able to put food on the table? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. You can get that wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or just go to thericksmithshow.com. And take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1835. That was the day that began the Baltimore Bank Riot. The Bank of Maryland had failed in 1834. Thousands of people who had deposited money in the bank saw their savings vanish. For nearly a year and a half, the depositors wanted their money to be returned. Anger grew. Some of that anger was directed at one of the bank's directors, Reverdy Johnson. The bank directors were accused of fraud and speculation that had caused the bank's failure. The bank officials were also dragging their feet on settling accounts with bank clients because the directors wanted to keep their personal fortunes. A crowd gathered around Director Johnson's house and broke out some windows. The mayor of Baltimore ordered a troop of 30 armed guards to protect Johnson's residence. The next day, the angry mob turned their attention to another director, John Glenn. They began to demolish his home before the mounted guards stopped the damage. 2 days later, the mob returned to Director Johnson's home. This time, they were able to overpower the guards. They piled up Johnson's property in the street and set it on fire. The crowd swelled and moved on to destroy property of other bank directors. Revolutionary War veteran Sam Smith organized a militia of 3,000 men to stop the destruction. The leaders of the bank protest were arrested and jailed. The bank directors received $100,000 from the state as compensation for the destruction of their property. The bankers were not held responsible for their actions, which caused the bank to fail. Does this sound familiar? Most of the bankers who caused the 2008 crash also never faced consequences. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, President of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads, but I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind, the union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case, and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
So I think it's important, and I go back to this, because I think it's really important to point out that the kind of empowerment that I talk about, that I have, I want for other people. I want everyone to believe that they have the kind of voice, the kind of power to be able to say, you know what? I demand better. You know, because the reality is, none of the gains that my grandparents' generation passed on to their children were given to them. Everything was fought for. Everything was demanded. You know, this idea that there's a benevolent corporation out there who bestows wonderful things on us is kind of ridiculous. And sadly, it's one of those things that, you know, I've questioned for a very long time, where you go, maybe this isn't such a smart thing. Maybe we should do better. So for me, this is one of those moments where I think in this moment we can and we should be doing better. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
You can't make this stuff up anymore. You legitimately cannot make it up anymore.
Well, everybody got to buy in. Don't you think everybody got to buy in? If everybody don't buy in, what do we do with it?
The people that work in this building, the overwhelming majority of them, I'd say probably 90%, are absolutely asinine and idiots.
So they should go reread their history before they start comparing Joe Biden to Ronald Reagan. I think that's a little sacrilegious, actually.
I think you're on trial, though, right? For not having...
No, the corporate media is on trial, and so is the rigged judiciary here.
But you literally today are on trial.
All conservatives are comfortable knowing that they do not have to be ashamed to be white.
So please be mentally ill. Right. Please don't know your gender. Please be 500 pounds. Please dye your hair blue.
Yes.
It is.
God gave us oil to burn for energy. Why do you think God made oil? God made oil and put oil here, just like he put cows here, just like he put apples here. God gave us oil to burn for energy.
And then it's onward to take on the socialist rat. I don't know, rat. Let's just call her that. Katie Hobbs.
Wow. So there's a song I want to play. It's No. That's not it.
You know, the Supreme Court of Heaven already decertified the 2020 election.
Watch out, Katie, I'm coming for you.
Well, nobody's gotten to the bottom of 9/11, unfortunately.
Somebody called me Trump, a female version of Trump, a little softer around the edges, and I take that as the highest compliment.
Trump rally alert. Have you RSVP'd for Trump's rally in Wisconsin? No, I live in Arizona, actually.
You know, here in America, we have gourmet treats for puppies. We have these amazing groomers for dogs. Well, in Venezuela, they eat the dogs.
Trump alert now. President Trump needs your support.
And I will tell you something right now. I thank God for AR-15s.
The best way to strengthen America's economy? How about investing in America's fastest growing industry, clean energy? We're talking jobs, millions of them, the type that pay well and can't be outsourced. Because the thing about clean energy, it's all right here, American made. It means lower utility costs for families, and it's how we take on climate change. An investment in clean energy is a big win. Congress, let's get it done.
The good news is America is coming back. More jobs, more building, more of what makes our country great. And more cities and towns, more small businesses and big corporations are choosing the highly skilled, highly trained members of the IBEW to do the work. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers is committed to doing the job right, on time, and safely. America is making a big comeback, and the IBEW is proud to do our part.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So interesting day of primary results, and the Trump effect. I gotta be honest. The Trump effect in full force. Nobody conceding. People taking victory laps before the votes are counted. This is kind of what you expect from the brave new world on the Republican side. And I got to tell you, I love Michigan, where the guy who finished fourth is refusing to concede. You go, how is it you only got 15% of the vote and you're still going to refuse to concede? Now, the guy who finished second, he said, in a distant second, I mean, way second, he said he's refusing to concede, but for a different reason, because he plays all 60 minutes. What the hell that means? I guess he's going to wait for all of the votes to be counted so that he can see if he finishes even further second. I'm guessing. The numbers, no way he can come anywhere better than second. But refusing because he plays all 60 minutes. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the results on Tuesday's primaries, and also the big victory, for me, unexpected victory in Kansas. I've asked our good friend Brett Pransky, the professor, to come share some thoughts, some insight. Brett, thanks for taking time for us.
All right, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about the Trump effect. I look at the woman there, that Carrie Lake, who last night she declared victory. We've won. There's no way for the other side to. Well, that margin's gotten a lot closer. She's probably still going to win, but, right out of the gate, hey, we grab the mantle kind of way of thinking, and interesting times.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's becoming just kind of the expected thing that the Trump-endorsed candidate, regardless of where they happen to finish, is just going to refuse to concede if they lose. It's becoming, increasingly common, and, it's becoming a kind of thing that it's become so common. You notice that we're not even treating it with the same level of disdain as we used to. Media in the past would call these things out. Now we're not really hearing about it today. It's almost an expected thing. There are a few articles about it, but there's no real attention being paid to it. Instead, we're paying attention to a lot of other stuff that doesn't matter near as much.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to me. But this guy and this other guy, finished fourth. I'm not conceding, not doing it. And you go, this kind of poor sportsmanship. When I was a kid, you get smacked for this kind of stuff. At least my mother would have smacked you. This is just the epitome of poor sportsmanship, in my view.
I think it's a misunderstanding of sportsmanship is what it is. For example, if you're in fourth place, fifth place, or eighth place, I can understand you running through the tape. You know what I mean? I can understand you trying to get your best time and giving it your best effort. I can understand all of that. But at the end of the race, you congratulate the winner, because that's what you do. You know what I mean? And this this idea that I'm in fourth place by a mile and I'm not going to concede. This isn't competitiveness. This is childishness. And and I'm not seeing it. But I can tell you this: the guy who's doing that, he didn't have very good coaches in youth sports. That much I can tell you.
No. I mean, we've got a lot of people who complain about participation awards, who throw temper tantrums when they don't get their own way, and that's really what this is to me. A bunch of people throwing temper tantrums. Now, Michigan has got the attention of a lot of folks. Peter Myers, loss. And look, you had to know he was going to go down because he voted against Trump. This is the Trump effect. But the DCCC spent a little bit of money on ads, kind of promoting the other guy a little bit, because they see this as an opportunity to take out a vulnerable Republican, and you got a lot of people attacking them for this. I'm curious what your thoughts on this are.
I think it's one of the silliest things I've heard in a very long time. I just don't understand this idea that the two sides have to play by entirely different sets of rules. I mean, Republicans do this kind of stuff, have done this kind of stuff, have been doing it forever, and never ever get called out for it. Hell, they make up candidates out of whole cloth just to shave a point or two off of the Democrat in the race. And all of a sudden, when Democrats engage in the game by the same rules that their opposition plays by, all of a sudden now everybody's up in arms, and now I never understood it. It's a complete lack of aggression, and it's silly. If you don't have the aggression to use every possible advantage to win in November, when democracy itself is on the line, then you need to choose a career outside of professional politics, because you just don't belong.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, I have a lot of people say, well, but Brett, we're better than that. We're better than they are. We play by a higher standard.
Yeah, well, that higher standard doesn't really do much for you when the right does what they do and they take Social Security and Medicare. That whole "we played the game by a different set of rules and we did it better" isn't going to feel real good when grandma's starving on the street.
Yeah, but Brett, when they go low, we go high, right?
I tell you what, I'm going to steal one of your phrases here. When they go low, you smash their faces in the dirt, and that's just the way it has to be. And again, if we were talking about the time when I was a little kid, when there was patriotic opposition on both sides and people could work out deals, and you had Democrats and Republicans who could find a way to do the right thing for the American people, then yeah, maybe we'd be talking about different rules. But that's just not where we are. We have one political party that has completely lost itself and is a danger to the American people, in the worst possible way. And you cannot, you can't play nice with these people. If you're in a street fight, you don't ask one guy to put on boxing gloves. You can't do it. And so if we have a better chance of beating Pete Myers' primary opponent in November, then that's who we want.
Yeah.
And there's just no other way around it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the other argument to this. But Brett, we could end up with someone much worse. And I love the framing of Pete Myers is a guy that evidently we can work with because he voted against Trump in a moment of conscience. This is a good one. This is one of the good ones. We could end up with a really bad one, Brett. We could end up with someone worse than Marjorie Three Names or Gun Fetish Barbie or the forehead guy from Florida. We could end up with worse.
Yeah, and this is where I don't quite understand the unbelievably low bar we're setting for some of these folks. I mean, don't get me wrong. Pete Meyer did a couple of things that are admirable. Right? I wouldn't even call them admirable. They were expected. Of course, you voted for Trump's impeachment. You have to, because it's what any American would do. Every vote to exonerate Trump is an un-American vote. So Pete Meyer didn't do anything extraordinary. He didn't do anything praiseworthy. He did his job. In fact, he did his job at the bare minimum. When you look at his entire voting history, you'll find he's on the wrong side of plenty of stuff. This is not a friend. This is not someone we like. Now, we may prefer him to someone else, but that's just a difference in, if you're going to get your throat slit, you want it done fast or slow. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the difference between Pete Meyer and his opponent. You want your throat slit fast, or do you want it, to happen a little slower? Me, I'd rather have the fight. I'd rather have the fight, and I would rather, have it with the aggression that we need to win.
Right, and this is where I'm happy to see that at least Democrats have balled up their digits and are getting in there and throwing some punches. Now they may lose. We may end up with crazy. We may end up with someone much worse. And to use your analogy, we may get our throats slit, and it may be quick. But at least throwing the punches, at least getting in there and fighting a little bit. And look, we're in a moment where there's some hope. I mean, I look at what happened in Kansas. I wasn't expecting what happened in Kansas, a 59-41 blowout for reproductive rights. I was not expecting that in Kansas. I was expecting to come here and go, what's the matter with Kansas? Again. But evidently not.
Yeah, and I think some of this has to do with the fact that this hyper aggression by the right wing has really kind of, because it's always there, it's always in your face, they're constantly flooding the zone. And what it does is it makes it appear that their ideas are more popular than they actually are. And they just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, with all this aggression. And then, the cliche everybody's been trotting out is this is the moment when the GOP, when the dog caught the car. You know what I mean? But it is kind of true. They pushed so far and got so far outside the mainstream that everybody was like, whoa, wait a minute, this is not what we signed up for. And so what we're finding out is that some of these policies are incredibly unpopular. Just because they get a lot of airtime, just because there's a lot of money pushing them, does not mean that they are things that people want. And what happened is last night the people said, we don't want this. And keep in mind, this is Kansas. This is bright red Kansas. If this can go down by 20 points in Kansas, what's going to happen in other states that aren't nearly as red as Kansas is? This is much, much, much more unpopular than the right would like us to believe.
No, this is a problem, and you're right. The dog caught the car and chewed through the bumper and into the trunk and through the back seat, and look, I'm hopeful that come November, people come out and vote, and in the numbers that they did in Kansas. Again, you look across this country, the voter participation ticking upward, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, not only is it ticking upward, but the voter registrations among women are shooting through the roof. I think right now, especially after last night, we have Democrats all over the country trying to find ways to get this stuff on the ballot because they know that if they do, people will come out and vote for it. And if you have a plus 20 point issue on the ballot, all right, your candidates are going to go up and their candidates are going to go down. So, expect to see, something on this, in many more places than just Kansas.
Yeah, you're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with the Professor Brett Pransky, talking about some of the results from the Tuesday primary. Your state had a primary, Ohio. In fact, the second primary, and good for you having two primaries. What's that like? The excitement of another primary, the expense of another. What's that like having two of those?
It feels like $25 million burned in a campfire. It's just, because that's what this costs. This second primary. Keep in mind, the reason we're having a second primary is because the gerrymandered maps that the Republicans put out were shot down by the Supreme Court again and again and again. Two ballot measures voted on by Ohio voters both got over 70% of the vote. All right, telling the Ohio legislature, we don't want your gerrymandered maps anymore. We want fair districts. And the GOP's response was, you know what, we're just gonna gerrymander it anyway. When the Supreme Court came in and said you can't do this, they said, you know what, we're doing it anyway. And that's what has led us to this point now. So now we have a second primary, $25 million taxpayer expense, simply so Republicans can keep their gerrymandered maps and keep pretending that they're more popular in states like Ohio than they actually are.
Yeah, it's a good thing you guys have all your roads paved and your schools well funded. It's a good thing you've got all those problems solved so that you can dig the hole and burn those kind of resources. It's a nice thing, I guess, right?
Yeah, because I could not possibly think of anything better that we could do with the money.
Scary times, but here again, this is an example of absolute power corrupting absolutely. Because as I understand it, and obviously you know more about this, it being your state, the maps that Democrats had put forth still gave Republicans, overwhelming control just not absolute and total control. Republicans want absolute and total control.
Yeah, this is, the Democratic maps that were put out were still a significant Republican advantage, a much larger advantage than Republicans actually hold in the state. This is roughly a 53-47 red state. All right, it's an R+5, R+6 state. Now, and when you look at that, we've had, just give you an example of what these gerrymandered maps have done. The 16 congressional seats in Ohio, well, we just got it reduced to 15 after the census, but for 10 years in a 53-47 states, Republicans held 12 out of 16 congressional seats because of gerrymandering. So they held 75% of the seats when they hold roughly 52-53% of the voting population, and they held every single one of those seats for 10 years. For 10 years, not one seat changed party in Congress, not one seat. So they were able to gerrymander these maps and then keep these seats red for 10 years. And then when the people came in and said, hey, we don't want any more of this, now they're just openly defying the law and the Constitution of the state of Ohio. And at present, they're getting away with it.
Yeah, and you wonder why Ohio is probably the most corrupt state politically in the country right now. In Pennsylvania, saying thank you, because Pennsylvania used to be the most corrupt state in the country.
Yeah, I mean, here we don't elect speakers of the House. We replace them after the FBI carts them off to jail. I mean, it's just the last three Republicans. Well, there was one guy. The last 3 out of the last 4 have been carted off by the FBI. Now, 2 of them were the same guy. He got carted off by the FBI, went home, touched base or whatever, and came back and won the speakership again and got removed again by the FBI. So, corruption in Ohio is as plentiful as corn.
Wow, it's almost like an Olympic sport. It's amazing. But here again, I'm looking at. I go back to Kansas. I look at the issues, and I'm hoping this is that moment where people are starting to look at just how extreme Republicans are. And I want to look at Wisconsin, because you got Ron Johnson, who evidently is now saying that they want to move the Social Security, Medicare money, over from mandatory spending over to discretionary. We make it discretionary spending. Maybe we pay it, maybe we don't. Is this now? Is this the third rail of politics that it used to be? Because it used to be in years past. Whenever you talked about doing anything to Social Security and Medicare, it elicited a massive backlash. Is this going to matter?
I think it may matter. I think it's not getting enough attention now. Because keep in mind, Ron Johnson talking about discretionary spending, which is really him saying, you know what, I'd like the opportunity not to pay for this if I don't want to, because that's what discretionary means. But the Rick Scott plan that came out months ago, where they actually put it on paper, the 11-point plan to save America, he called it, in which he, Rick Scott proposed that we sunset all federal legislation every 5 years, which means re-upping Medicare and re-upping Social Security every 5 years. And that if we were to come to a decision on re-upping that, there wouldn't be the Republican votes to carry it. So that what they're going to do is they're coming after these things. They want to eliminate them. And it's something that I'm really surprised isn't getting a lot more attention, because the day after Rick Scott released that plan, that should have been the last day of his political career.
Exactly.
You should have been drummed right out of office. I mean, the day after, you're gonna kill Social Security and Medicare. That's it. Get out. And the Republican Party should have done it. They should have said, "That's it. You're done." Instead, they, while most people are not necessarily endorsing the plan, some people are giving it half-hearted support. No one is truly opposing it, and there is no other plan. The Rick Scott plan is the only one the Republican Party has put. It's the only legislative agenda that the Republicans have put out. So we're basically running on, a national abortion ban and killing Social Security and Medicare. That's the Republican platform. And I have no idea why these races, every race in America should be 60-40, just like the Kansas referendum was.
But Brett, they don't really mean it. It's kind of like the same thought process to what they're really not going to kill Roe. They're just going to put limitations on it until they actually do it.
Yeah, and they'll say that in front of Senate testimony. I mean, they'll say that on the Senate floor, in their confirmation hearings. No. Roe is settled law. All right. When they tell you who they are, believe them. Believe that if they say they want to do this, they will do it given the opportunity. And we just learned that in very large and very damaging ways, in the Dobbs decision.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on the about face that the Republicans made on the PAC Act. Are you surprised that they quickly did an about face on this?
I'm not surprised they quickly did an about face. And I was surprised that they voted it down. I mean, 84-14 in a procedural vote, and then they kill it at the last moment with the veterans literally outside, waiting for their celebration party to begin. Because keep in mind, all the veterans and, Jon Stewart was in town. These people came down to celebrate the passage of the bill.
Right.
And with them on your steps, you vote it down out of sheer pettiness. I mean, let's not forget why it happened. All right. Joe Biden cut a deal with Joe Manchin, and we came out with a bill to cut the deficit and fund some climate change, do some really good things. Mitch didn't want that to go through, and so Mitch McConnell threw a little tantrum, and next thing you know, the PACT Act fails, and it was a horrible. You shouldn't do things when you're mad. You shouldn't do things out of emotion. Mitch McConnell got a little emotional and did something stupid. And it bit him. And so they immediately came back and passed it on Monday after making a weekend round of really bad arguments about, oh, no, the Democrats were playing games with the bill and things. It was all nonsense. They knew it was nonsense. They knew the argument wouldn't hold. So Monday they voted for it because they had no other choice.
Right. But it's back to that thing, that discretionary mandatory spending thing. That was Ted Cruz's argument. The Democrats wanted this trick. I'm going, no, it's not a trick. I think it should be mandatory. I think you allocate the money for it. It should be spent on veterans and healthcare and people who are suffering. I think that's what you should do. Absolutely. I don't think you should have the choice of, maybe I pay it, maybe I don't. No, I don't think that's how this should work. So no trick here, guys. None whatsoever.
Yeah, the Ted Cruz argument about discretionary funding. Let me tell you the one thing that is always universally true about Ted Cruz, and that is this: Ted Cruz is lying. All right, and it doesn't matter. You can replay that soundbite every time Ted Cruz says anything into a microphone. The answer to it is Ted Cruz is lying. If he's not lying, he's sleeping. And that's just, and that was thoroughly debunked right from the start. It was masterfully done by Jon Stewart, where he immediately addressed what Ted Cruz says, and took it apart and exposed the lie for what it was. And that's just what he does. That's just what Ted Cruz does to get his way. He has absolutely no problem lying, and lying boldly if it gets him what he wants.
Yeah. One of the most despicable people in the Senate. Would love to see him ousted as well. But Brett, I appreciate the time, the thoughts, good stuff. Look forward to talking to you again real soon.
All right, thanks.
Good stuff. Our good friend Brett Bransky, the professor. Going to take a quick break back with your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Back after this.
Over 70 years of experience in heart and aviation, the members of the Association of Flight Attendants know the realities of the aircraft cabin better than anyone. We don't just serve drinks, we save lives. We don't just negotiate contracts, we move major policy issues like the smoking ban, no knives on planes, clean water, and safe food on board. The air we breathe matters, and we stop the spraying of poisonous pesticides. Training, rest, and no calls on planes matter as we fight fires, de-escalate conflict, revive, and breathe life. We safely usher passengers to the big business deal, the family vacation, the times of celebration, times of grief, and times of battle. We are aviation's first responders, and we are the last line of defense in aviation security. We are the first impression and the smile of aviation, connecting the people of our nations. Fly with us, partner with us, make progress with us. The Association of Flight Attendants. Stronger together, better together.
Q-Cells has been like the first around here that focuses on clean energy. For millennials, not a lot of us want to be jumping around job to job trying to figure out what we want to do. But in clean energy, we see a sense of job security and longevity, something that we're going to be able to do for a long time. It's important for Congress to invest in clean energy infrastructure because it sends a positive message to smaller communities like Dalton. It'll provide jobs for those that are struggling to meet their financial needs.
The climate crisis is here.
These temperatures are almost unbelievable, even for a meteorologist.
And the solution is here too. Clean energy, like wind turbines and solar panels. Now, Congress has to invest in it and in the millions of workers ready to install it across the country. Because in America, we don't hide from problems like climate change. We take them on. We innovate. We lead. Because if we invest in these workers and their future at this moment, that's how we build back better.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Kind of wrap things up. Big win in Kansas. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. And Republicans have got to be, dropping bricks about now, because this trouble for them. That kind of energy in a red state, that kind of energy, I think I would have preferred it in November. To be honest, I think I would have rather had it in that, to get that kind of a push to the polls and people remembering why they've got to go out and vote. But it is what it is. Quick reminder: 49 days in a row, gas prices have fallen. Now that Joe Biden has done. If you remember, put some pressure on those oil executives and the oil companies who have been gouging our eyes out. Yeah, that you can blame Joe Biden for, bringing down oil prices 49 days in a row. That's something I think we can blame on him. Where are those people with the finger and the pointing? Where's that? Yeah, I know. Don't. Just don't. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, download the podcast. Take the program on the go wherever you go. It's always available, always there, shareable. Share it with your friends, especially your coworkers and folks. Maybe your MAGA friends. Maybe you got a relative who, watches that F channel, needs a little help. We can do that. ricksmithshow.com. That's where you can go to find that, or wherever you get your podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. There we are. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
This is KCAA.
Single-family houses and apartments are the key to passive income, aka retirement. No one knows this better than America's most successful investor educator, self-made multimillionaire, and CEO of Lifestyles Unlimited, Del Walmsley. You've heard Del and his team on the radio. Now join the Lifestyles Unlimited team on location in Anaheim, August 13th and 14th for your Financial Freedom Seminar. Claim your seat now at GiveMeTotalFreedom.com. Over the course of 16 hours, we take you step by step, A to Z, on how to successfully invest in both single-family and multifamily properties. This is a complete class, not one of those teaser seminars. It's designed to teach you everything you need to know to purchase single-family and multifamily investment properties using our roadmap on your own from day one. Our team of expert educators and mentors want to meet you for 2 days of life-changing education. Get your lifestyle now. Go to GiveMeTotalFreedom.com. Limited seating, unlimited potential. Sign up now at GiveMeTotalFreedom.com.
This is Judge Herb Dodell, and our show is called For the People. It's available every Monday at 4 o'clock